What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about 5 helpful tips and tricks when polishing out paint, more specifically black paint. Now I am going to throw in a little bonus tip or trick a little later on in the video, so be sure to stay tuned for that. Now tip number 1, guys, is washing and decontaminating your paint. So before we start in here on the paint correction process, washing it and decontaminating the paint is really important. Personally, what I like to do is a 2-stage decontamination process where we will mechanically decontaminate the paint, and then we will clay the paint. So I will chemically remove all the iron particles from the paint. You can see that really well on white cars. On a black car like this, it's a little harder to tell. Once that process is done, I'll wash, rinse the car down, and then I will proceed with soaping the car back up and using the soap as lubricant to clay the paint, removing all the contaminants, ensuring that the paint is nice and silky smooth and clean, and then we can begin the paint correction process. Now I should mention the reason why it's important to decontaminate your paint. For you guys who are like, why do I need to even decontaminate my paint? The reason for that being, guys, is we want to avoid pigtails, and what pigtails are is basically a uniform deeper scratch in the paint. It looks kind of like a little curly Q, like a little pigtail, and what causes that is even if your paint is washed and clean to the touch, if you basically take your hand or put it in a plastic bag like they show in some instances, you can really intensify and feel those contaminants in your paint itself. And what happens is those bonding contaminants on your paint do not get removed from normal washing. So what we like to do, or what I like to do personally, is chemically and mechanically decontaminate the paint to remove all those contaminants. But what happens is if those contaminants are left on the paint, imagine my fist here's a little contaminant, and the polisher is going across it, it picks up that contaminant and then drags it in the paint until it either you stop polishing, you pick up your polisher, or that little particle falls out. And what ultimately ends up happening is you have this deeper uniform scratch in the paint that looks like a little pigtail or curlicue, and it's the reason why they call it pigtails. Now tip number 2, guys, this should be a given, but for those guys that maybe be newer to polishing, that is masking off the paint. Right here you can see you have everything masked off minus this little section, but I will get into that here in a second. So the reason why we want to mask it all off, and the reason why I haven't masked off these rubber trim right here, is you see when we open the door, this trim is no longer next to the paint right here, so it is not necessary for me to mask off all this rubber trim right here. Now what ultimately ends up happening, guys, by not masking it off, the plastic here, rubber trim, if this rubber trim was actually stationary where it's not going to move when you open the door up next to the paint, is by masking that off. If you do not mask this off right here, what happens is as you're polishing on it, your compound gets into the rubber here. The plastic is very porous and basically stains it, and it's a nightmare to try to clean compound or polish residue out of all those little crevices. So taking a couple extra minutes, masking the vehicle off, and mask this whole car off in probably 5 to 10 minutes. It's a little bit of a complicated car. There's a lot of little tight areas, especially around the mirrors right here. But again, guys, taking that 5 to 10 minutes is gonna save you guys so much more time in the long run trying to go back and clean all those little areas and spots like that. So hope that little tip number 2 helps you guys out. All right, guys, so for tip number 3, we're gonna come over here. Now the garage is not 100% done yet, so please excuse the mess over here. I'm in the process of getting permits to put in a wall and some stuff like that up here. Anyways, for tip number 3, guys, we're gonna be talking about our pads and product combination here. Now this is important, especially if you guys are doing a level 1 or a 1-step paint correction, where we're not going to be super aggressive. If we're doing a level 1 paint or a 1-step correction, we're not going to be super aggressive on the paint. So we need to find something that's a nice happy medium, where if we're super aggressive, we're going to leave haze and stuff like that behind. You're going to basically lower that gloss level. You want to find a nice happy medium with the pad and product, so we can get a nice refined finish, but at the same time removing as much imperfection, i.e. swirls and scratches, from the paint itself. Now, one other thing I should mention, guys, is when you're working on paint, there's different types of paint out there. You have soft paint, you have hard paint, you've got like a nice medium, like we're in between, and that's where a test spot comes into play. So for tip number 3, guys, you definitely want to do a test spot with your pad and product testing. So you do a little test spot on the vehicle, you test your arm speed, how much pressure you're putting down, things like that, so you know exactly the right combination, the right pressure, everything that kind of plays into that. I'll go a little more in depth into that in a later video, but this is kind of just a quick brief overview of my 5 steps. So let's move on to tip number 4. Now before we jump into tip number 4, guys, if you guys are new here to the channel, I want to welcome you. Also, if you guys have not already subscribed to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button. And also, if you guys are liking the video, be sure to give it a big old thumbs up. Now for tip number 4, guys, we're going to talk about residue control, and that is blowing out your pads, keeping them clean. Now whenever I go over and do a section pass, after I get done doing my section, I'll wipe it down, inspect it, and then I'll come over here, blow my pad out, and then reapply product and continue on throughout the vehicle. Ensuring that you have a clean pad, minimizing that residue buildup on your pad right there is going to help give you that nice refined finish, especially if you guys are doing a level 1 or a 1-step paint correction. So for tip number 5, guys, is inspection. Inspecting the paint, making sure everything looks top notch for your client, whatever you guys agreed on, whether that is a 1-step paint correction, a level 2, or your full-blown world-class show car shine, whatever it is you guys agreed on, making sure you guys are meeting that client's expectation. Whenever I sell a job to a client, I always try to underrate my work, so when they get the job back, it is more than likely going to exceed their expectation, which is really, really important. So I try to lower my clients' expectations initially, like what I'm going to do on the vehicle, and then when they get their car back, like, wow, it's better than I thought, versus the opposite to that, where you overpromise and underdeliver, which is not a situation you guys ever want to be in. I hope you guys enjoyed those 5 helpful little tips right there. I do have the bonus tips. We'll be covering 2 separate bonus little helpful tips I hope you guys enjoy. First one here, guys, is this nice little door jamb stopper. What this allows me to do is open the door up, lock it at a certain position so I can get a nice polished edge right up to the edge of that door right there. It's gonna hold the door in place so the door is not kind of moving around, which is really, really nice. So you can use this for all 4 doors, as well as there's another adapter you can use for the trunk jam. So when you're working on the trunk lid area, you can lock that trunk in place and actually work on that trunk edges right there, so you're not potentially dinging an adjacent panel. So this is a really, really nice tool to have. Now for bonus tip number 2, this is a big one right here. This is a must-have in my opinion. This is a paint depth gauge right here. Now there are multiple different paint depth gauges on the market. There are cheapy ones for a couple $100 that will read pretty much only on metal substrates, for one, and 2, it's going to read all layers. It's not going to give you a top layer, which is the important number that we should know, of how much clear is on there or how much single stage paint is on the vehicle. Now with this gauge right here, guys, this is a couple $1,000 gauge. This gauge right here is going to allow me to read how much clear is on the car. It's also going to allow me to read how much single stage paint is on a vehicle if we're working on a vehicle that has single stage paint, and also allow me to read on cars that have carbon fiber substrates, cars that have plastic, polyurethane, metal, whatever it is, this will be able to read it, which is very, very important to know. Now that is all I got for you guys in today's video. If you guys enjoyed it, I want to invite you guys to hit that like button. If you guys have not already done so, hit that subscribe button, turn on that bell notification so you guys get notified every time we drop a new video. We are dropping 2 new videos every single week on Wednesdays and Saturdays. So if you guys are new here to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button. We got a lot more great content coming here in the near future. Till next time, talk to you guys soon.